Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 249, Outrageous Fortunes. The episode begins with Ash and the gang on their way to Blackthorn City as usual when they had reached a town and decided to stop at the Pokemon Center to rest up for a while. But on their way, they then saw a battle happening outside the center, initially being attracted to it after hearing a whole bunch of yelling from a crowd who was watching the battle. The battle looked pretty fucking intense, as the crowd was going apeshit, so Ash quickly ran into the Pokemon Center to heal his Pokemon, and then ran out and joined the crowd along with Brock and Misty immediately after. The battle was between two trainers, one named Mason with his Hitmontop, and the other, Delaney, with his Poliwrath. The Hitmontop had just went in for a triple kick, but it missed, allowing Poliwrath to use Double Slap. Seeing Poliwrath's skills, and being the water Pokemon lover that she was, Misty instantly complimented the Poliwrath on how well trained it seemed, with Ash admitting that Poliwrath was skilled as well. Hitmontop then goes for triple kick again, but Poliwrath manages to catch Hitmontop's leg, and then uses submission to throw him to the ground, causing him to faint, meaning that the Poliwrath had won the battle, as the entire crowd applauds. Ash was still impressed with the Poliwrath, obviously, but he questioned how it was able to use submission, believing that only fighting-type Pokemon could learn submission, and for some reason, he thought that Poliwrath was only a water-type, forgetting that it was a fighting-type as well, which Misty reminded him of, stating that Poliwrath could learn submission as soon as it evolved from Poliwhirl, because that's when it became a dual water and fighting-type. Delaney then celebrates what he claimed was his 7th victory in a row, and demands another trainer in the crowd, anyone at all, to challenge him next. Ash, of course, steps up to the plate, and accepts Delaney's challenge, but Misty then jumps in front of him and declares that she wanted to battle as well. This leads Misty and Ash to get into an argument, with Misty claiming that it was always Ash who battled, and it was her turn for once, and also states that Ash wouldn't stand a chance against the Poliwrath, but she might, since she had a Poliwhirl. Ash simply retorts that he asked first, so he should get to battle, and the two glare at each other, continuing to yell, until Delaney butts in and stops the argument by suggesting that he would just battle them both, believing that he had the sheer strength to do so. Ash and Misty thought that Delaney meant that he could battle both of them at the same time, but Delaney clarified that he would take them on one by one. Ash and Misty start arguing again over who Delaney should battle first, making Delaney annoyed as he swiftly ends the argument by choosing to battle Misty first, making Ash a bit bitter, but he didn't want to lose out on the chance to battle Delaney at all, so he decided to just sit back and watch, commenting that Misty was weak, so the battle would be over quick, leading Misty to yell at him, leading Ash to lie that he was just kidding in order to stop Misty's anger, as he was getting tired of her bitching, as the battle between Misty and Delaney began, as Delaney of course used his Poliwrath, and Misty used her Poliwhirl. Ash, Brock, along with the rest of the crowd, were actually pretty amused by the start of the battle, as it started with a flashy collision of water gun attacks administered by both Poliwhirl and Poliwrath. Of course, due to the attacks colliding, they failed to do any damage to either Pokemon, so Poliwhirl tried something different, being a bubble, but Poliwrath was able to easily dodge and then go in for a double slap. With Poliwhirl weakened from a double slap, Poliwrath picks it up and finishes the battle with submission, just as it did with the Hitmontop, knocking Poliwhirl out. Misty immediately runs up to Poliwhirl and hugs it, congratulating it on doing its best, as she returns it to its Pokeball, while Delaney, on the other hand, celebrated that he now had 8 victories in a row. After seeing Poliwrath's display in battle, however, Ash was even more interested to battle it, so he reminded Delaney that he still had to battle him, as he sent out his Bayleaf. Bayleaf started things off with a Razor Leaf, but Poliwrath dodged and struck Bayleaf with a double slap. Meanwhile, as Misty was watching this battle, Poliwhirl was eager to watch, so it quickly recovered in its Pokeball and asked Misty to send it out, as it tried to pop out on its own, but since it wasn't side of her Wobbuffet, it couldn't do that, so Misty let it out, and admitted that it watching the battle was a good idea, as it should get a feel for what Poliwrath was like, as Misty was planning to get a Water Stone somewhere, and evolve Poliwhirl into a Poliwrath, being inspired by Delaney's Poliwrath strength. This desire was only amplified as Poliwrath continued to kick Bayleaf's ass, with Misty declaring that Poliwhirl would evolve no matter what. Misty and the crowd weren't the only ones watching the battle, as Team Rocket was watching from the bushes, spying on Ash and the gang as usual, and they watched as both Poliwrath and Bayleaf used strength to try and knock each other back, with Bayleaf being in a pretty bad position, as it was forced to go up on its hind legs to apply more pressure. Upon seeing Poliwrath's strength, Jessie declared that Team Rocket should go after Poliwrath as opposed to Pikachu this time, and James and Meowth agreed, remembering several times that they had seen a Poliwrath beat Pikachu before. I can't recall any of these times personally off the top of my head, but I'm sure it's happened before. I mean, there's been, 249 episodes now? It had to have happened once. Or maybe James was just referring to other Pikachus. Regardless, James, Jessie, and Meowth wanted Poliwrath, and Jessie added that they could still get Pikachu anyways, as once they had a Pokemon as strong as Poliwrath, they could use it to capture Pikachu. Team Rocket then began plotting a serious plan to capture Poliwrath, noting that they would likely have to do something different than they usually did, since they weren't going for Pikachu. Meanwhile, as for the battle between Poliwrath and Bayleaf, both Pokemon were almost out of breath and glaring at each other, fucking bitchy that neither of them had to back down yet. And they were severely injured to boot, like they were fucking tired and exhausted, and Brock noticed this, so when Ash told Bayleaf to end the match with a body slam, and Delaney told Poliwrath to end the battle with a double slap, Brock stepped in and interrupted the battle, declaring it a draw, stating that both Pokemon were too weak to go on, and it would be irresponsible and dangerous to have them continue. Ash and Delaney initially yelled at Brock for interrupting the battle, not thinking that Bayleaf and Poliwrath were that injured, but they soon really checked out their Pokemon and found out that Brock was right, so they conceded and agreed to call the battle a draw. Ash and Delaney then officially introduced themselves to each other, shaking hands, as they complimented each other's Pokemon, noting that they were both very strong. Brock then introduces himself as well, and suggests that Ash go back to the Pokemon Center to heal up his Bayleaf, and Ash agrees, as Misty comes along as well, but she doesn't go before also introducing herself to Delaney, thanking him for the battle that they had as well. Ash gives his bay leaf to Nurse Joy, and Misty gives her Poliwhirl to Nurse Joy as well, and Ash and Misty decide to rest on a couch in the Pokemon Center, talking about how they hope their Pokemon would be healed soon. But Ash becomes impatient and wanted to check on his bay leaf to make sure she was doing good, so he gets up off of the couch he was sitting on, but didn't notice that Nurse Joy's Chansey was currently cleaning the floor, so it was slippery as fuck, causing him to fall to the ground. Chansey worries for Ash's safety, but Ash assures her that it wasn't its fault, and he was fine. The chaos of Ash falling alerted Bayleaf and Poliwhirl, so they came running out of the emergency room they were in to check up on Ash, and Ash made sure to assure them that he was fine as well. As Brock and Misty, knowing that he was fine, helped him up. Although unfortunately, Ash's belongings fell out of his backpack as he was being helped up, including the King's Rock that he had won back during the sumo tournament that he entered with his Snorlax. As Brock and Misty help Ash put all his miscellaneous food and other supplies back into his backpack, Poliwhirl takes interest in the King's Rock and picks it up. Misty doesn't notice the King's Rock in Poliwhirl's hands, as she was too concerned about it being away from the ER, so she quickly recalls it back into its Pokeball, and gives the Pokeball to Nurse Joy, who had also rushed out of the emergency room, instructing Nurse Joy to please treat her Poliwhirl yet again, assuring her that it wouldn't run out. Unbeknownst to Misty, though, Poliwhirl was holding the King's Rock while it was inside the Pokeball. Nurse Joy obviously accepts, and Ash follows in Misty's footsteps, recalling Bayleaf into her Pokeball, and requesting that Nurse Joy get back to treating her, and also gives her the rest of his Pokeballs so that Nurse Joy can do a checkup on them as well, in addition to Pikachu. Nurse Joy responds that she would let all the Pokemon get some well-deserved rest as she takes them in to the ER. Meanwhile, as for Delaney, he had left the town and was walking in the woods, holding his Poliwrath's Pokeball, apologizing to it for making it battle so hard, and not realizing how bad a shape it was in. Just then, he encounters a fortune teller with a table in the middle of the road, actually being Jessie in disguise, as Jessie then takes out a crystal ball and puts it on the table, and claims that she can clearly see anyone's future, including Delaney's right at this moment. Delaney, of course, found this suspicious, questioning to himself why a fortune teller would be in a non-crowded place. Because, fortune tellers didn't make a lot of money if they didn't get customers, obviously. So you think that they would go in the nearby fucking town where there were people, as opposed to a random spot in the middle of the road. Delaney was about to accuse her of being a fraud, when suddenly, James and Meowth came up, disguised as orange farmers, and claimed that Jessie was the best fortune teller, and always predicted the future correctly, even predicting that the great mandarin orange would grow on these farmers' farm, and also predicting that orange prices would see a dramatic increase. So as a result, this had made the orange farmers rich. Now, of course, this was all just a lie concocted by James and Meowth, but it really showed that Team Rocket really was going with a different approach to try and capture Poliwrath, as opposed to Pikachu. James then further gasses up Jessie, as he explains that if it wasn't for Jessie's predictions, then he never would have continued orange farming. He was initially just going to, pick a few oranges, sell them, that was it. But once she had predicted the great mandarin orange growing on his farm, he decided to turn it into a full-time career, and said that because of this, Jessie was his hero. Even though James and Meowth were just acting here, Jessie took the compliments as fact, and smiled at James and Meowth. Delaney initially believed that James and Meowth were telling the truth about how good Jessie was as a fortune teller, so he agreed to have his fortune heard. However, as James and Meowth continued to just thank Jessie and continue glazing her up, even giving her baskets and baskets of oranges, supposedly just out of pure thanks, Delaney began to get suspicious again, thinking that this was all a ploy, and Meowth and James may have in fact just been hired by Jessie, or told by her to glaze her up. So Delaney began to leave. This made Jessie angry at Meowth and James, as she told them to stop, claiming that they were being too over the top with their glazing, and were probably scaring Delaney away. So James and Meowth obliged, as Jessie called for Delaney to come back, angrily shouting that Delaney hadn't even given her a chance yet. Delaney continues to walk away, so Jessie gets the idea to reveal that she already knew that Delaney had a Poliwrath, hoping that would make Delaney believe her, as he didn't know that Jessie had seen that he had a Poliwrath before, so Delaney should just think that she was able to accurately predict that. And sure enough, that's what Delaney thought, as he was amazed that she was able to predict what Pokemon he had without seeing it. And Jessie also said that Poliwrath was his strongest Pokemon, which amazed him even more, because that was true, and there was no way Jessie could have known that either. So, he now believed that Jessie was telling the truth again, so he went back up to her table and asked about his future. This leads Jessie to look into her crystal ball, acting as if she really could tell the future, as she claims that Delaney would become rich as fuck, and he would develop many successful skills, and this pleased him. But then, Jessie began to get nervous, as she claimed that his most powerful Pokemon, Poliwrath, would be influenced by evil as well, so not all was sunshine and rainbows. Delaney panics upon hearing this, and questions when his Poliwrath would be inflicted by evil, leading Jessie to pretend to freak out, as she claimed that Poliwrath was actually evil right fucking now, and she needed his Pokeball immediately to expel the evil from it, with something that she called the Ceremony of Exorcism. Delaney was desperate, so he chose to believe this, and willingly handed over Poliwrath, as Jessie explained that the exorcism involved covering Poliwrath's Pokeball with a cloth, and having its trainer count to 30 slowly with its eyes closed, while simultaneously praying to whatever god you believed in for the evil to go away. So, Delaney obliged, closing his eyes and counting to 30 slowly. Praying as well. This was of course all part of Team Rocket's plan to steal Poliwrath, as now that Delaney had his eyes closed and was distracted counting, Team Rocket grabbed Poliwrath's Pokeball and slowly began to walk away, laughing as they did so. However, Delaney heard this laughter, so by the time he counted to 10, he stopped, becoming suspicious of the laughter, and opened his eyes slowly, so as to not raise suspicions on himself. because he didn't want Team Rocket to find out that he was suspicious. And sure enough, he catches Team Rocket with Poliwrath's Pokeball just starting to make their getaway. Upon noticing that Delaney had looked and they'd been caught, this just made Team Rocket run away even faster, scared that he might catch up to them, as Delaney began chasing after them and demanded that they give his Poliwhirl back. Delaney yelled so loud that Ash and the gang were able to hear his yelling from the Pokemon Center, so they ran out and chased the source of the sound, eventually coming across Delaney, who explained what was going on as he continued to chase Team Rocket, now with Ash and the gang's help. Eventually, Ash and the gang are able to actually catch up, along with Delaney, since Team Rocket were only running away on foot, so they weren't that fast. So when they get to them, Ash demands answers, wanting to know why the fuck they took Poliwrath. This leads Team Rocket to laugh, as they do their motto, and state their plan to use Poliwrath as a strong Pokemon to capture both Pikachu and other Pokemon as well. Ash retorts that Team Rocket would not get away with this, as they were caught now, but Team Rocket just laughs, as they manage to run away far enough until they manage to get to their Meowth balloon, which they then hop into and make their escape in, as they begin flying away, with Poliwrath's Pokeball still in their grasp. Ash and the gang and Delaney were not ready to give up yet though, so they chased after the Meowth balloon, still running on the ground themselves. Unfortunately, they were so focused on the Meowth balloon that Ash ended up slipping down a hill, not watching where he was going. The others still have the balloon in their sights, so they keep following it, but they become too focused on the balloon as well, and fall down the same hill, as the hill leads everyone into a truck filled with hay that was still moving. The truck begins to drive them in the opposite direction of the Meowth balloon, as Ash and the gang struggled to get out of the truck due to the fact that they were injured from falling, and they didn't want to jump out of the truck when it was moving, but they still wanted to chase the Meowth balloon. So Ash, being the reckless bastard that he was, got up from the hay and was about to jump out of the truck while it was still moving, but stopped himself, as he speculated that the truck was already probably too far in the other direction by this point, and the Meowth balloon was probably getting away, and he was proved right, as he then saw the Meowth balloon was already too far gone by this point, and had disappeared behind a mountain. Ash realizes that he could send out his Noctowl to go after the balloon though, but when he goes to send him out, Misty and Brock remind him that he had actually left all of his Pokeballs at the Pokemon Center. Ash panicked, as they had to find some way to get Poliwrath back, so they decided that before they could go after the Meowth balloon, they would have to get to a Pokemon Center first, and have it transfer all of Ash's Pokemon over to them, so that they could help get Poliwrath back. So, when the truck stops at a cabin in the woods, Ash and the gang instantly get off and head to the nearest Pokemon Center. Meanwhile, Team Rocket had landed their Meowth balloon somewhere else in the forest, and were celebrating actually being able to successfully capture the Poliwrath, and Jessie really wanted to take it out and try and train it to obey them, so she informed James and Meowth that they were likely too deep in the forest for Ash and the gang to even think of catching up to them and finding them, so that convinced James and Meowth to agree to let Poliwrath out, so Jessie threw Poliwrath out of the Pokeball. And Jessie immediately introduced herself to it, stating that it was to forget about its old trainer, and Jessie was going to be its new trainer now, and she was going to help it become even stronger. It seemed Poliwrath obviously wanted to go back to Delaney though, as it responded to Jessie by double slapping her straight in the face, which pissed her the fuck off, because she thought that her beautiful face was now ruined. Jessie soon realizes that getting mad at the Poliwrath wasn't gonna make it obey her by any means though, so she forces herself to calm down, and tries to train Poliwrath to solidify herself as its new trainer, as she sends out her Arbok to battle it. Jessie knew that Poliwrath was strong, but she was still surprised when her Arbok was knocked out before it could do a single attack by one of Poliwrath's double slaps. James was impressed by Poliwrath's strength, though, and tried to befriend it, wanting to become its trainer instead of Jessie. However, when he tried to befriend it, Poliwrath responded by using a submission on James, grabbing him and tossing him to the ground when he tried to pet it. Meowth came to the conclusion that Poliwrath just didn't want to work with humans that it didn't know, and figured that it may be able to coerce Poliwrath into working with them if it talked to it Pokemon to Pokemon. So Meowth tried talking to it, also seeing to it as well, to see if that would please it, but this just resulted in Meowth getting soaked by Poliwrath's water gun, knocking Meowth out. James and Jessie were both frustrated, although James was still enamored by the Poliwrath, since it was so strong. Jessie was also still amazed by the Poliwrath, obviously, but she was more angry at it, declaring that nobody double slaps her and gets away with it, promising to make the Poliwrath listen to her eventually, even if she had to try and force it to. Meanwhile, Ash and the gang had managed to find another cabin in the woods that also happened to act as a Pokemon Center, although it was more of an outpost, as there was no Nurse Joy there, so it was essentially just a rest stop for trainers. Since it was a rest stop, though, it did have a computer and a Pokeball transfer machine, so Ash was still able to contact the Nurse Joy from the Pokemon Center back in town and request that she send over his Pokemon, which she did as they arrived through the transfer machine. Misty also has Nurse Joy send her Poliwhirl back as well. Before Ash and the gang leave the little Pokemon Center there, they also asked Nurse Joy if she had heard about Team Rocket potentially coming back into town, but she confirms that she heard nothing, leaving Ash and the gang with no clue as to where Team Rocket had went off to, but they decide to go and look anyways, along with Delaney, who was still with them. As Ash and the gang then come out of the mini Pokemon Center, they're confronted by an old man who seemed very angry. He reveals himself as a local farmer in the area, and states that he saw two people and a Meowth ordering around a Poliwrath to battle an Ursaring, and it seemed as if they were controlling the Poliwrath using some sort of device, adding that it was despicable and super evil. Ash and the gang were alarmed by this, and figured that Team Rocket might be responsible, so they had the old farmer lead them to where he had spotted this. We then cut to Poliwrath battling an Ursaring, and we see that Team Rocket was in fact responsible, and they had hooked Poliwrath up to a device that Team Rocket called the Mark III Manner Minder, which was a brace machine that went around the Poliwrath that allowed them to control its movements. Jessie liked to call the machine the force you to do what I want machine, as that's essentially what she used it for, as she was forcing the Poliwrath to battle the Ursaring against its will. They were initially just going to regularly battle the Ursaring to train Poliwrath up, but it refused, since it didn't like Team Rocket. As Jessie pulled the wires connected to the machine tightly, this forced Poliwrath to use Double Slap on the Ursaring, and the Ursaring then fights back, using a Body Slam. This causes Poliwrath to flinch, making it unable to do anything, but Jessie doesn't give up, and she simply pulls the wires even harder, forcibly putting Poliwrath out of its flinched state, and forcing it to use a submission attack, grabbing the Ursaring and sending it flying away, ironically blasting off like Team Rocket would. Team Rocket then compliment their new invention, talking about how fucking awesome it was, as Ash and the gang show up, as the old man had led them to Team Rocket's location, and they all instantly demand Poliwrath back, especially Delaney, who realized that his Poliwrath was hooked up to a machine that was controlling its movements. Jessie teases that she couldn't give Poliwrath back because it just wanted to be with her so much, as she forcibly stops it from running towards Delaney. Ash knew that Poliwrath obviously wanted to go back to Delaney because of this, and he got extremely angry that Jessie was teasing them and fucking just abusing the Poliwrath. So he decides to help it out and tries to stop Team Rocket so they can free it from the machine, as he sends out his Fampy. Before Fampy can unleash an attack though, Poliwrath was forced to use Water Gun. Even though Fampy was pretty injured by this, Ash ordered it to retaliate with a takedown, but Delaney stopped Ash before he could complete the order, which shocks Ash, but Delaney justifies it for two reasons. One of them being he didn't want his Poliwrath to end up getting injured, but he also didn't want Ash's Fampy getting injured as well, since Poliwrath seemed extra powered up, being forced to attack, and essentially Fampy was a baby and he was like, yo, I don't know if your baby Pokemon can handle my strong Poliwrath. And sure enough, right as Delaney said this, Fampy proceeded to get double slapped. Because of this, Ash admitted that Delaney was right, and sending out his Fampy probably wasn't the best idea, leading Misty to jump in to help Ash by sending out her Corsola, having it help out by using Spike Cannon as a hook to get up to the Meowth balloon, which Meowth had retreated into, so that it could watch Poliwrath battle from up above, and not risk getting harmed in the process. However, when Corsola made its way up to the Meowth balloon, Meowth tried to weaken Corsola so he could capture it as a little bonus, so he proceeded to use Scratch on it. Corsola then countered with a tackle though, knocking Meowth out of the Meowth balloon, and into Jessie. With Meowth dealt with, Corsola noticed that Fampy was having trouble with Poliwrath, so it set its sights on Poliwrath next, specifically aiming to take out the machine controlling it, as it used Spike Cannon and Tackle on the machine, which sent it flying off of Poliwhirl and onto Jessie. Delaney was worried because it looked like Poliwrath was severely injured from having the machine knocked off of it, but thankfully Poliwrath was able to get back up, and it was now fully in control of its movements due to the machine now being on Jessie. Meowth wanted to take revenge on the Corsola and just Ash and the gang in general for what they did to him, and he saw the perfect opportunity, now that Jessie had the machine on it, to get revenge fully on his own. He was going to use the machine to command Jessie to attack. First, he tests out the machine by ordering her to simply move around and walk around, and she does so. So, the next thing he does is order her to battle Corsola, telling her to scratch it. And she does this, but Corsola counters with a tackle attack. Meowth then forces Jessie to tackle the Corsola back, but Corsola uses Spike Cannon in response. This Spike Cannon defeats Jessie, so Meowth tries a second approach, which was attempting to order Poliwrath to use Flamethrower and Hyper Beam. This causes Jessie to angrily get back up out of pure disdain for Meowth's stupidity as she goes to slap him, reminding him that, 1, Poliwrath was no longer under the machine's control, as she still had the machine on her, which Meowth had somehow forgot. And she also clarifies that even if Poliwrath did have the machine on it couldn't use Flamethrower and Hyper Beam because it couldn't learn those moves, especially since it was a water type. James was also fed up with Meowth's stupidity and wanted to try out the device for himself, so he took the wires from Meowth and ordered Jessie to use Flamethrower and Hyper Beam, which just made Jessie get even angrier, as she reminded James that he was being just as stupid because she obviously couldn't use those moves either because she was a goddamn human. James was frightened by Jessie's anger, but realized that he had no reason to be, as he could simply just order her around since she was still connected to the device, so he tried to order her to use another attack, being a submission. Jessie tries to grab Corsola like a Pokemon using submission would, but she misses, and this causes her to fall and roll into a tumble. Just then, Poliwrath had fully recovered from its time in the machine, and was laughing at Jessie for how badly it fucked up a submission, and wanted to show her how it was done, as it used submission on her, angrily. Meowth and James were angry at Poliwrath for showing them up, and they only got even angrier when Poliwrath followed up with a double slap directly on Jessie, which happened to knock the device off of her, meaning that James and Meowth couldn't control her anymore. Despite Poliwrath saving Jessie from the machine technically, Jessie was still angry at the Poliwrath for fucking hitting her and harming her in general, so she decided to send out her Arbok to attack it, as James sent out his Victreebel as well, although Victreebel ate James first, leading Meowth to suggest that they should use the machine on Victreebel to make it obey James better. Anyways, Victreebel soon stopped eating James, and it and Arbok went to go attack Poliwrath, leading Misty to send out her Poliwhirl to assist, and Ash to send out his Fampy to assist, even though he had recalled it before, because he believed that Fampy could take on Victreebel and Arbok, because they were not nearly as strong as Poliwrath. Anyways, as soon as Ash saw Misty send out her Poliwhirl, he was shocked to see that it had taken the King's Rock from his bag and had it on its head, and he was even more shocked to see that the King's Rock caused Poliwhirl to evolve, not into Poliwrath, but into Politoed. That's right, the King's Rock was an evolution item. Misty and Brock spotted this as well, and their mouths were wide open in shock, as they all admired how beautiful Politoed was. Although Misty wondered what the fuck Politoed even was, as she thought that Poliwhirl could only evolve into Poliwrath. However, Brock clarified that Poliwhirl could actually evolve into two Pokemon, Poliwrath with a Water Stone, or Politoed with a King's Rock. And when Ash used his Pokedex on Politoed to learn more about it, the Pokedex confirmed this. Although Misty initially wanted a Poliwrath, she was thrilled by this evolution as well, since it appeared to be somewhat unique. And Misty then watched as Politoed happily played with Phanpy for a little bit, leaving Poliwrath confused at its weird brother in some way. I mean, they're not brothers actually, but they're in the same evolutionary line. Misty declared, upon seeing how happy Politoed was, that it would be a very fun time to train it, and then Phanpy, Politoed, and Poliwrath all began to attack Arbok and Victreebel. However, before Phanpy could use Takedown on Arbok, like Ash had instructed, Jessie was extremely furious by the momentary distraction of Misty's Politoed interrupting their battle and shit, so she had Arbok prepared to attack first, tackling Phanpy. James was also infuriated by the distraction that Politoed caused, so he told Victreebel to attack Politoed directly. Politoed prevented Victreebel from attacking, though, as it caught it off guard by shaking its leaf, as it was trying to happily greet it. It seemed as though, upon evolving into Politoed, Politoed had become a lot more happy and just willing to see everyone as good guys. So, yeah, it just wanted to try and befriend Victreebel. However, Misty assured Politoed that Victreebel couldn't be befriended and ordered it to use Water Gun instead. And Politoed obliged, since it still obviously would listen to Misty. Victreebel tried to use Razor Leaf to counter the Water Gun, but the Water Gun was too strong. And this caught Victreebel even more off guard, so it allowed Politoed to go for a double slap on Victreebel. Misty was immensely impressed with her new Politoed's strength, as she complimented it, leading the Politoed to start dancing with happiness, happy to have Misty's approval, and to be doing so good against Victreebel. Ash was focused on Politoed and its awesome skills as well, to the point where he forgot about Phanpy, leading Delaney to alert Ash that Phanpy was currently being wrapped by Arbok, and also was just tackled around relentlessly by it. So Phanpy was not in good shape. Misty felt kind of bad that everyone was distracted by her Politoed, which had put Phanpy in this predicament, so she wondered how she could try and help out Phanpy. Brock tried to help Misty come up with a way to help by looking through his guidebook, specifically on the section related to Politoed, and found out that Politoed should be able to use a move called Swagger, and suggested that Misty order Politoed to use it. So Misty obliges, and it was revealed that Swagger essentially was a form of confusion, as it made Arbok and Victreebel confused, and they began attacking each other as opposed to Phanpy, therefore releasing Phanpy from the wrap in the process. Team Rocket were immensely surprised by this, while Misty was glad that she was helping. However, the Swagger quickly wore off, leaving Arbok to go attack Politoed with its Slam attack, and Misty noticed that this Slam seemed particularly powerful. This led Brock to try and find an explanation in his guidebook, and he found out that Swagger may have confused the Pokemon that it was used against, but it also raised their attack power as well, so once they were not confused anymore, they would be very dangerous. Explaining that the increased attack power was usually meant to help out its opponent, because the increased attack power would be used on itself, but now that Arbok was free from the confusion, the increased attack power was benefiting it. With Phanpy free, but still injured from its immense beating by Arbok, and Politoed just having been knocked down, Delaney takes action as he orders his Poliwrath to use Double Slap on Arbok. This Double Slap was strong enough to knock Arbok out, impressing Politoed, as it thanked Poliwrath for helping it out, and decided to now help Poliwrath out itself, as both Poliwrath and Politoed teamed up to both use Double Slap on Victreebel, knocking it out as well. Even though Phanpy was injured, it got inspired by seeing Politoed and Poliwrath's battle, and decided to use a takedown on the fainted Arbok and Victreebel, sending them flying into the Meowth balloon, and knocking into Jessie and James. Upon falling into the Meowth balloon, Jessie, James, and Meowth hit Poliwrath's Pokeball, which was still inside, out of the balloon, leading Delaney to catch it and return his Poliwrath inside. Yay! With Team Rocket and their Pokemon down, Pikachu finishes them off with a Thunderbolt, sending them blasting off, leading everyone to celebrate, finally defeating Team Rocket, as Poliwrath pops out of its Pokeball to join in on the celebration, and Politoed dances around happily. The episode then ends as Ash and the gang and Delaney return to the town, and Delaney thanks Ash and the gang for all their help getting back his Poliwrath. Ash promises that he'll battle Delaney again someday so that they could see which one of them was stronger, and suggests that the Johto League would be the perfect way to do this. Delaney nods as Delaney and Ash shake hands, and Ash and the gang then say goodbye to him as they continue onwards to Blackthorn City.